How do I sound?
And there's the intro.
There's the intro. The exciting world of Overwatch 2. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Hidden Doors and High Scores podcast, a podcast where four dudes talk about games. Today there are only three of us. I'm Austin.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm Chris. Today we're doing something a little different. We have all been participating in the Overwatch 2 closed beta that just opened about a week ago, and we are just going to do a real quick deep dive into basically all of the character changes and our just sort of general thoughts, general first impressions about the game.
And also I've added timestamps below, so if you want to go in the comments, you can skip to whatever character you want to know about.
So I think the first thing we obviously need to address is the elephant in the room, or the lack thereof, which is Overwatch 2, it is a 5-man team instead of a 6-man team. And what they've done is they've removed one of the tanks. So it's 1 tank, 2 DPS, 2 support characters. And they've also given each of the classes like a special passive ability. And they've kind of made all the tanks that are still around a little bit beefier to compensate for the fact that they're the only one who's going to be taking a lot of damage now. So tanks have a new passive that they have a 30% reduction in their knockback, and you also get 30% less ultimate charge from shooting them and from healing them. And then another big change they made, like broadly to the game, this isn't specific to tanks because there are some heroes, DPS and healing heroes, who have armor. Flat 30% reduction to all damage taken while you have armor. So that is going to be generally make tanks a lot tankier.
I think that's a super necessary change. If you're completely removing a tank out of the game, the tanks need to be better.
All right, so first up, Reinhardt, his base armor and health increased by 150. His shield reduced by 400. And the regeneration rate is pretty bad.
His charge is easier to control, and he can cancel it now, but it does less damage.
And the cooldown's less. It's 8 seconds now. And he also gets 2 fire strikes. But the way he plays now, he's got a worse shield. You're not really meant to use the shield as like trying to barrel in with your team. He's more of a DPS character now. You kind of want to charge in, get a quick kill, hit some guys, and then use your shield to get out. So Reinhardt, I felt like in Overwatch 1 was an A or even S tier tank. Now he feels B tier just because he's way more DPS and less of a tank. He's not quite in his tank role anymore. So I'm going to say B tier.
All right, next we got Orisa. Both her armor and her health were increased from 200 to 250, so she got 100 more total health. Her primary fire now has an overheat mechanic instead of like an ammunition, which is interesting. It takes about the same time to reload. It does do slightly less DPS, but from what I could tell, it didn't really do that much less. I was putting up huge numbers with her while I was playing with her, and pretty similar to what I was doing in Overwatch 1 with her. The biggest changes were to her special abilities, so they removed both her deployable barrier and her right-click halt crowd control ability. They were replaced by an energy javelin, which she throws, which does a ton of knockback. It is an incredible boop tool, and also does about 80 damage. And then her other ability is called Javelin Spin, which is basically the same thing as D.va's Matrix. It's just an impervious shield. For like a couple seconds, it does damage. It gives her a 60% speed buff, and it pushes people. It is incredible. I think it's probably the best new ability in the game.
Yeah, totally agree. It's fucking bananas.
Yeah, it's so much fun just doing that. Oh, and instead of having Supercharger, which increased all your team's damage, she does a thing where she pulls enemies toward her and it like charges up and does damage. She slams down on the ground. That also give her the benefits of Fortify, her other ability where she gets damage reduction and crowd control imperviability. I was an Orisa main in Overwatch 1 as far as playing tanks go, and I think that she is the best tank in Overwatch 2, hands down.
I can tell you, playing against her, she feels invincible. She's so good. That damn javelin spin is amazing.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
Orisa in Overwatch 1 was a B, and if you played her really well, A tier tank, and she is now S tier, easily S tier. It's and obviously this is not the finished product. They're going to make changes from this, but if she's anything close to like this in the finished product, she's going to be the best tank in the game.
Okay, so next character is Winston. Winston got 50 more armor. He also got a new ability. He has a right-click shot now, which is like a long-range electric shot. Basically, it does 20 damage uncharged, and fully charged does 50 damage. It's got pretty good range. It doesn't headshot, but also it takes a long time to do. It takes a couple seconds to get it to full charge to do 50 damage. His left click is way better for close-range enemies. Also, his barrier got an extra 100 health, and cooldown is slightly faster. It's 1 second faster, but his ult takes 10% longer to charge now. So I don't know. I think Winston was probably A tier before, and now he feels like a B to me. He just feels a little squishier, although he's technically not. But he feels like he dies easier because there's no one else to distract them. So yeah, I think he's gone from an A to a B.
One of the biggest changes they've made to Overwatch 2 is the changing of role of Doomfist. Doomfist was a DPS character in Overwatch 1. He is now a tank, which is interesting. His health was increased from 250 to 450, which is huge, but he got some ability changes. So they removed his uppercut, so his like basically elimination combo doesn't exist anymore. His primary fire damage got reduced only a little bit, but that wasn't really how he killed people anyway. His rocket punch damage got reduced by 70% when it's fully charged, which is a lot. So he really does not kill people anymore. But here's the thing about it. The charge time is reduced, and if you use his new blocking ability that they replaced uppercut with, it empowers rocket punch if you block 100 damage, which is pretty easy to do when you're like the only tank and the entire enemy team is focusing you. And that gives a 50% increase to the damage, the knockback distance, and 100% stun time increase if they hit a wall, which is a lot. So the power block thing also reduces his incoming damage by 90%, so you should be using it all the time. The biggest other change they made is that they halved his ultimate damage, which to me seems fine. Doomfist is an interesting one to rank because he wasn't a tank, but he was pretty tanky because he got, when you hit people with his abilities, he earned shields in Overwatch 1, so he like could become tanky if you were playing him correctly. He is more tanky now because they increased his health and his ability to block damage, but the damage decreases to him. The damage nerfs seem so significant that I think he's really hard to play. He doesn't have as much tanky ability as the other tanks and doesn't do as much damage as he used to. I'm going to say he's probably a C tier tank.
Really? C tier?
Yeah.
Okay, next up is Zarya. Zarya is one of my favorite tanks to play. She got 50 more health and 25 more shields, but much more interesting is that she used to have one barrier that you could put on yourself and one barrier that you could put on a teammate, and now she has two barriers that you can use either way. So you can do it like old Zarya, or if your teammates really need it, one right after another, you can put two barriers on teammates, or if you're up in the enemy's face, you can bubble yourself twice in a row. So they're just basically on a shared 10-second timer. So every 10 seconds, you get one of your barriers back. And the barriers last an extra half second now, which is cool. Her energy does fall off a little bit faster than it used to. But on the whole, she feels so much more survivable than she used to, being able to barrier herself twice and having the barriers last just a little bit longer. And with no other tanks to absorb damage, you get bumped to 100 charge very quickly with Zarya if you're playing her smart, and she is a murder machine now.
That was my experience too, is she just is, you're just always at 90 to 100 charge all the time.
Even with her new energy fall off being faster, it so little matters because you're just always bubbling yourself and murdering the whole enemy team. It's great. It's so much fun to play her now. Also, she got a slight buff to her ult. which is that like Reaper and Moira can't just like phase out and get out of it anymore. They are stuck in it now. They can still be not there to get shot, not shootable, but they can't just like walk out of it, which is pretty cool. I will say overall, Zarya feels much stronger in this game with those changes. I think she went from B to a solid A.
Sigma only had a few changes. His shield increased from 100 to 200, so he's a little more tanky. His accretion ability damage went up pretty significantly, so he does slightly more damage now. And projectable barrier, his experimental barrier, the regen rate on that after it comes down slowed down a little bit. So pretty neutral, I feel. Mostly the damage on accretion is the significant change. I used to use that a lot as a finishing move, and it actually works as a finishing move now, unlike what it did in Overwatch 1. I think Sigma was probably a B tier tank in Overwatch 1, and I don't think that's changed much.
Next up, we got D.va, which is my main tank. Her base health increased by 150, but her armor was reduced by 100. So health-wise, she doesn't feel too much different. Her cannons, her primary fire, she has less of a movement penalty, 10% less. And then the spread from her guns are from 4 to 3.5, which is actually really helpful when you're going after DPS characters. She feels great. There's a lot less shields in this game, so her ultimate can hit a lot more. She's just a tank that fills so many roles so well, and she can get anywhere that she needs to be really fast. I think she was an A or S tier before. I think she's S tier in this game.
I agree. Her movement ability and her speed feel really significant in this game.
Roadhog, not much change here. He got 100 more health, and his self-heal heals him for 350 now instead of 300. Roadhog feels terrible to me in this game. He doesn't get the benefit of the new armor changes. Roadhog was always best as a flanker, right? Like his goal was not to be with the rest of the group. His goal was to be on the side, pulling a healer or a DPS out of position and killing them with his hook. That's Roadhog's job. Without another tank to defend your team, you can't really effectively flank as well without leaving your team totally open to the other team murdering them. And being the only tank with just 700 health, it feels like the other team, if you're just standing on a payload as Roadhog, you're just getting melted. You have no ability to protect yourself, to reduce incoming damage. You just sit there and you take it. And you're a huge target. I think Roadhog was a perfectly good sort of flanker. Roadhog was either an A or a B tank in Overwatch 1. He feels like a solid D now. He feels unplayably bad.
Yep, agreed.
Next up, we have Wrecking Ball, which I think has become one of my favorite new tanks in Overwatch 2. So his armor and health increased by 50 each. His adaptive shield increased from 8 to 10 meters. And the biggest change is his health gained when using his adaptive shield is from 75 to 100 per target. You're basically Winston's ultimate, and it feels amazing.
Yeah.
He's so much fun to play. I think he was fine in Overwatch 1. We have a friend that mains him, and he's very good with him. I think he's going to be amazing now in Overwatch 2 with him. I would say he was a solid C before, and I think he's an A. Just because of the amount of shield you get, he feels way more like a tank now. Before, he felt like run in, do a little bit, run out. Now you can run in and like stay in the battle for a bit. And he's annoying to deal with. So yeah, I'd say an A tier.
Just like D.va, his movement ability makes him far more viable in this game than he was before.
All right, let's move on to the DPS. So all DPS characters now have a passive, which means that they just move 10% faster than they did in the base game. So all of the DPS characters feel more mobile, more agile, harder to kill, harder to hit. They're much better at flanking than they used to be.
Yeah, and speaking of flanking, first up we got Soldier. He is unchanged, but because of that 10% move faster, he's faster than all the tanks and healers. So he can run to the back, quickly kill a healer, and get out of there. So he still feels great. I would say he was an A tier before he's still an A tier.
All right, Sojourn is the next one we're going to talk about. She's the new character that was added in the beta. She is very fun to play. She feels a little bit like Soldier. So her left click is a fast-firing machine gun, very similar to Soldier's heavy pulse rifle. It does 9 damage per shot, which I think is a lot less than Soldier's. I think his does like 20. But what makes hers really cool is every shot she hits, even on a barrier or shield, gives her railgun 5 charge. The railgun does 130 damage when it's fully charged. It has infinite range. It's like playing Soldier and Widow together, except that she also has some other really cool moves. She has a projectile energy ball that she can shoot out. That's her E move. And it slows enemies down who are in it, and it does 50 DPS. If you hit them like dead center with it, it'll slow them enough that they can't get out in time in the 4 seconds, and it'll do 200 damage. And then she also has a slide that's sort of her left shift. It's kind of like Soldier's sprint, but it does have a cooldown. It's this big, long slide. And then at any time during the slide, you can jump, and you get this huge jump, almost like a Baptiste jump.
I think when Overwatch League starts back up again, you are going to see Sojourn players single-handedly win matches.
Yep. She feels like she can change the entire tide of a battle by herself very, very quickly.
That's without even using her ultimate, which is just unlimited railgun shots for whatever amount of time it is.
Yeah, so her ult gives her 9 seconds where her railgun fully charges to 100 every second.
Yeah, just take out the entire team immediately. Yeah.
And when you fire with her ult, the railgun shots pass through enemies, so you can kill multiple enemies with one shot.
Yeah,
which
unbelievable.
Is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, she's going to be insane.
Yeah, she feels incredibly powerful. I mean, you've got to be good and hit headshots with her, but she's amazing.
Another character that got a massive change is Bastion. His normal shot does a little bit more damage, fires a little slower, but he no longer can self-heal. Instead, it is a grenade that can either bounce off a wall or stick to someone. It does 130 damage, which is pretty significant. And then his sentry turret is no longer there. Instead, it's a moving sentry turret. It has 35% reduced speed, but it is infinite ammo. And the sentry turret now has a 6-second duration and a 12-second cooldown. So you can't just go in and out of it, but it feels really fun. It feels a lot less boring than the sentry turret was before. But the best thing is his ultimate. It's artillery ultimate, but you basically turn into a mortar, and it's a lot like Doomfist's ult, where there's a target on the ground and you can set it to shoot down, but you get 3 of them. So you can kind of hold off an area. You can hone in on one guy. It's really fun to use, and it seems like you can go the entire distance of the map. Basically, Bastion he feels fun now. He was not fun before. I would say in Overwatch 1, he was probably B. I mean, maybe A, but he still doesn't feel great. I would probably keep him at B, but close to A because of how much more fun he is.
My bae.
I have a feeling that she is no longer bae.
That's how I thought. So what they did generally in this game is they took away almost everything in this game that locked down your opponent. Her regular shot no longer freezes people. What it does is it slows people down immediately. Instead of doing 55 damage per second, it now does 100. So the thing is, in 2 seconds, you can kill a lot of characters by just holding your freeze gun on them. So she is a murder machine at close range. It's weird because she feels more like Reaper now. She also got more ammo, so she can hold down her attack for longer. Her ice wall got pretty seriously nerfed. It's got less range now and a lot less health. I didn't think I was gonna like her, but I do. Mei was probably a B tier. She might have moved up to an A. It's really easy for her to wipe an entire enemy team now. I have gone in the back line, killed both healers, then killed both DPS, and then started pulling it on the tank while my team finished them off. Like, it's pretty insane what a single clip of her gun does now.
And her ultimate still does freeze.
Yes, her ultimate is exactly the same. It is unchanged, which is a little weird. But yes, her ultimate is totally unchanged. It still freezes everybody, and then you can shoot them in the head with your icicle gun. But honestly, it's probably faster to just hold left mouse bumper. Like, the icicle gun is now only for long range. Echo, not much change with Echo, except that she did get nerfed a little bit. Her beam that can really kill people at low health, its maximum DPS was reduced from 200 to 175, which is not that big of a deal. But big deal, her ultimate now gives you a maximum of 300 health no matter what character you duplicate. If you duplicate a Tracer, you still get 150. If you duplicate a Reinhardt, tough shit, you get 300. It's a huge nerf to her because she always would copy a tank because it ensured that her copy would stay alive long enough to do their ult, regardless of what that ult was. And now, with only 300 health, I don't think that's the case anymore. So I think Echo's going to have to be a lot more choosy about who she duplicates. I think at our level, Echo is probably a B rank character, and I feel like she's now a C. Pharah is totally unchanged. With fewer divas on the field, she feels a little bit stronger. There's fewer things to block her from raining justice from above. So she feels a little stronger to me, honestly. Also, with her being a little bit faster, it's easier to dodge shots while you're in the air. So I think she's moved up for me. Honestly, I think she's probably moved from a B to an A for me.
All right, next up is Cassidy, who got some pretty significant changes. So the big one being they removed his flashbang ability, like Austin was saying with Mei. They're trying to remove basically all stun abilities. From an overall balance perspective, that's a thing I like. I don't like mechanics in games that prevent other people from playing the game. What they did with Cassidy was they gave him a magnetic grenade, which homes onto enemies if you throw it within 10 meters of them, which is huge, and also will chase them for 13 meters once it starts homing, which is also huge. You can literally throw it 180 degrees around a corner. I did that the other day. It does 131 damage if it sticks to someone, so it does like 65 damage twice for different mechanics and then 1 damage for actually sticking on them, which I think is funny. Fan the Hammer, his right click fire rate got reduced slightly. Another big change for him, which I really like, is his ultimate. When he's using it, he gets a 40% damage reduction buff. So you can't, a single, like you can still, a team can focus fire him down out of it if they do it quickly enough, but like single headshots probably won't kill him out of his ultimate, which I really like. I think Cassidy was probably a B. I think he's still that.
His Deadeye is pretty freaking amazing now that there's no shields, or not a lot of shields.
So maybe you're right. Maybe he's more of an A than he is a B now. I'll give him an A. Next character is Genji, whose kit is unchanged, but again, with the 10% movement, he is just going to be that much better because he was already just jumping all over the place and tearing up backlines and coming in and out and really hard to hit. I don't really play Genji, and I've seen a lot of stuff about Genji just being an absolutely terrible character in Overwatch 1, especially the higher up you went. Still kind of feels like a low C tier character to me.
Oh, so many tryhard Genji fans are going to be so mad at you right now.
Yes.
They can be, but
bring the hate.
That's fine. And again, like the movement buff thing is only going to help him, right? Hanzo only had one change. His storm arrow, which is his ability where he shoots 5 arrows really quickly, the damage of those arrows got reduced by 5 each. I didn't ever really seem to get that many kills with him. He always seemed like a killing people from long range with headshots kind of character. I don't think that's a very significant nerf. Maybe it is at a lower tier where people have worse aim, and that's like how you kill people is by, bursting them down with 5 arrows and you land 2 or 3 of them. Hanzo is still probably I'm going to say high B tier.
Next up, we have Ashe, she only had one change. Well, Bob only had one change, and it's 12. He had, instead of 1,200 health, he has 1,000 health. Not too big of a change. Ashe in Overwatch 1, in the right hands, she's probably an A, but I feel like she's a B. But now with Sojourn, I feel like she's either B or C. Like, why would you pick her over Sojourn? And they made Bob worse. So I'm gonna say C.
I will say that having fewer shields around makes her dynamite ability better, just because it can't be blocked as easily. But you still have to be landing headshots with her to be really good. And speaking of headshots, Widowmaker got more health. She went from 175 to 200, so she's just like most of the other DPS characters now. Again, with one fewer tank, maybe it's easier to be landing shots with Widow, but again, if you're not clicking heads with Widow, you're not playing her right. And with other DPS characters getting a 10% movement buff, they're going to be harder to hit. I'm going to give her a C. I think she's just solid. I think it's very dependent on like exactly how good your aim is.
Tracer. The only change on Tracer is her damage was reduced from 6 damage per bullet to 5. So she does less damage now, which means you really got to be hitting those headshots even more now to make her count. She's a hard character to play. Some people are very confident and think that they can play her and can't. The people that can play her well, yeah, she's an A tier, but in our area, she's a C tier.
A 6 to a 5, that's like a 20% damage reduction.
Yeah.
That's enormous.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Junkrat. His Steel Trap now slows the target by 65% instead of completely stopping them. But its damage was increased from 80 to 100 now. Because the trap doesn't completely stop him in place, it did bring Junkrat down a little bit, but he still feels great. Being slowed 65% and doing 100 damage now, you're still probably going to kill that person. If you're anywhere nearby, they're dead. So I feel like he didn't get changed too much. I feel in Overwatch 1, people felt he was a B, and I feel like now with the changes, he's probably still a B.
Reaper, very similarly, didn't get a lot change, but did get nerfed a little bit. So his shotguns, the damage per pellet was reduced a little bit. A full blast of one of his shotguns, instead of doing 120 damage at close range, now does 110. And also their spread was increased pretty significantly. So you really have to get in close with Reaper to be effective. I mean, you always had to get pretty close, but I think Reaper's going to be a lot less effective at taking down Pharahs and Echoes, any characters that he has to deal with at a pretty significant range, because his spreads just increase so much that he's not going to do very much damage. He does still feel about the same to play in terms of flanking in the back line, teleporting on top of a building, jumping down and firing 3 blasts into a Zenyatta's face. He still does great. So I think Reaper was always a solid A tier character at our level, and I think he's still right there, even with some slight nerfs to him.
Fewer tanks to block his ult too. I think that's pretty significant.
All right, Sombra's another character that had a big overhaul. Her damage was reduced a little bit, but now her cooldown on her hack is 4 seconds instead of 8. She can now hack while invisible. And now when she hacks someone, they cannot use their abilities for only 1 second now, as opposed to the entire time of the hack. But instead, it's the trade-off is the entire team can now see that person that you've hacked. She's more of a like Zen now, where Zen would put a Discord orb on someone. She can now like target someone. Hey, we're all going after this person, which is incredible.
That's great for coordinated teams. I will say that the hack reduction feels really significant, because I was playing the other day and getting hacked by a Sombra constantly and never couldn't use an ability when I wanted to.
But yeah, it's very consistent with the general overhaul of the characters, right? And basically saying being unable to move, unable to use your abilities is really unfun. Like basically just turning your character off and then getting killed feels really shitty. And they just kind of got rid of that from basically everyone.
Also, her ultimate has changed, and it is great. 40% of her current health she does as a dot on everyone, and she hacks all of them. So you can now see she's basically Widowmaker with her ultimate, and also is damaging all of them. It's weird. You have to get used to playing her now. She just feels completely different. I would say she was probably B tier in Overwatch 1. I feel in the right hands, she's an A or S. Like, I could see her being one of the best DPS characters, but I'm going to say A, be conservative.
All right. Last two DPS characters. Neither Symmetra or Torb had any significant changes. I feel like Symmetra is going to be interesting because of the movement nerf that her turrets give. So on the DPS characters that have 10% speed buffs, that is now going to be counteracted by her turrets. So that could help if a team is coordinated enough to like focus down characters who are being slowed by that. Sim's probably a C tier character and higher than that situationally, but I'm going to say C overall. And she doesn't really change that much, I don't think. Another big nerf, actually, that I just thought of, she probably is even worse now. Symmetra's gun used to work like this. It ramps up over time while you're doing damage, and if you were doing damage to a shield, it regenerated ammo at the same rate at which you used it. Now, because there are fewer shields on the map, because there's one less tank, it's harder for her to be at full power with her primary fire. So she is actually probably slightly worse now. Torb does all his damage with a turret that is going to be able to hit faster characters anyway, so I don't really think that he had any significant changes. Torb also probably a C tier character, and I don't think he's changed much from that.
I would say that Torb is probably the most likely to get a change before Overwatch 2 comes out, because he needs something. Man, he just does not feel good.
All right, let's get into support characters. So all of the support characters now have a pretty significant passive buff, which is after they stop taking damage for 1 second, they start healing 15 damage per second until they are back at full health, which is pretty insane.
That being said, Mercy has passive healing increased by 50% on top of the already support passive. So she's just way tankier, way harder to kill now. She felt great in Overwatch 1. She still feels great. I would say A tier.
If not S. With her passive healing now, unreal. Like if you're doing a pharmacy and hit scan DPS characters on the other team aren't landing shots, she's never coming out of the air.
Yeah, I'll bump it up to S tier. Next up, Anna, probably my main support. Her sleep dart got a nerf from 12 seconds to now 15 seconds. She doesn't feel too much different. She still feels great. You don't have to rely on the other healer to heal you or your bio grenade. You just can automatically heal if you got shot once, it's great. She still feels great. I feel like she was an A before. She's still an A.
Moira, totally unchanged. Like a lot of the DPS characters, she still feels like she can flank pretty well with fewer tanks to block her death ball coming in and sapping health from everybody. Still seems pretty strong. Although with the passive healing on all the support characters, you can't really like drain their resources like you used to be able to. I mean, I always thought she was an A. She still feels very strong to me. I think she's still an A. Zemyatta is my main support character. The only change they made for him is you now have an icon on your screen of what character you have your healing orb on and what their health bar is at. So you can very easily, when they've recovered all their health, know to switch it. And you never get confused when there's a whole big group up in front of you as to who it's on, which is a great change. That all being said, Zenyatta does not feel as strong in this game. Mm-hmm. With DPS being faster, it's harder to land your headshots on them. And with the DPS being faster, it's even easier for them to flank in and just run down a Zenyatta because he has no movement tools. So he feels a lot squishier than he used to. And without a second tank to protect him, I always used to think Zen was a solid A support character, and honestly, I feel like he's dropped to a C.
Onto my support main, Baptiste. His primary fire damage fall off range got decreased. The other change they made to him is his regenerative burst healing increased from 75 to 100, which is huge. Now, I will say that regenerative burst got used a lot to self heal, which he no longer needs to do, but used properly in the middle of a team fight in close proximity with your teammates, that is a huge, huge, huge buff. Sombra's ult now kills his immortality field, which it didn't do before. If you could get immortality field out before the ult came up, it would still protect you, and now it just destroys it immediately. So BAP is still a high B. I don't think it's that significant. As far as like the new meta against DPS, he's probably slightly worse, but the regenerative burst healing kind of counteracts that. So I'm going to go high B for BAP. And then the other B, Brig, got some pretty significant changes, and I love them. I think Brig is going to be an amazing support character in Overwatch 2. So her Shield Bash ability, this is the only thing that got changed, but it got changed in a lot of ways. Her Shield Bash ability no longer stuns. Again, we've talked about it before. They took stun mechanics out of the game. But what it does is, instead of doing 1 damage, it now does 50 damage. So it is a great finishing move on characters with low health. The range at which she bashes got increased from about 7 meters to 10 meters, which is a lot. The cooldown got reduced by 2 seconds, which is a lot, so you can be using it all the time. And when you land it on enemies, it triggers her Inspire ability, her passive area of effect healing ability, which is what her other attacks do as well. I think that's huge for Brig. Austin was saying that Zenyatta is going to get burst down a lot by flanking DPS characters, and the way you counteract that is with Brig now. It always was. She was always a great bodyguard character for your other support, and she is even better at that now with the buffs to her Shield Bash. I think Brig was probably a B. I think she's a solid A support character now.
Finally, we have Lucio. Lucio got only 1 buff. Well, technically 2 buffs. One of his buffs is the sound barrier cost reduced by 12%. So you get sound barrier a little bit more. But his biggest buff is the lack of stuns in the game. How do you kill Lucio? You usually use a shield bash, or he gets caught in Junkrat's trap. Now, nothing can stop him. He has a passive that heals him. He can just do speed boost and be healing himself. He is damn near impossible to kill. If you are on a control point, you can do a perma hold with just Lucio. He is insane. He's S tier.
He's one of the best flanking DPS characters in the game now.
Yeah, he's a flanking DPS with a constant heal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he can't push tanks back as far. Darn.
Let's just say overall impressions of Overwatch 2 right now. Now, obviously, one of the big things about Overwatch 2 is they're going to do a PvE campaign, which I'm very excited about. But as for the PvP, this is a much faster game. You die easier, you kill people easier. The swings and the amount of team kills that happen is much, much higher than it was in Overwatch 1. It is much easier to have a good flank, pop a healer in the back, and just wipe the enemy team.
Yeah, I feel like a big complaint with Overwatch 1 with a lot of players that like to take control of a team and choose DPS. Before, you really needed to work as a team. You couldn't just go off on your own. I feel like in this game, you can definitely make plays on your own.
Yeah. With only 1 tank to defend them, the tank can't block everybody all the time. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I'll sort of echo what you guys said. The game feels so much faster. You die all the time. Nowhere did I feel that more than in the new game mode, which is called Push, which is excellent, by the way. The momentum going back and forth, like the robot just going back and forth across the map all the time. It's, I've never yet played one where one team had control of it the entire time.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that there's not as many sort of unique moves and skill sets, right? Like Sombra's hack was a unique thing, and I mean it still is technically, but like shutting down a character for 5 seconds was a big deal, and it was a thing that only Sombra could do. And like Mei freezing people solid was a cool thing that only she could do. And now it feels like all the DPS are more similar in the sense that they all just kill things, right? Like they all just have abilities to kill things.
I'm very excited for PvE to see what that's like going to be like in this game, because the little bits of it that they did in the first Overwatch when they do like the Dr. Junkenstein thing was amazing. I love all those things. So
Oh yeah, that's been my overall main draw to Overwatch 2, not the PvP. I'm just so excited because I mean the PvP is what it is. It's little changes. It does change the game. It speeds it up, but it still feels like Overwatch.
Yep.
yeah, it's sure it is definitely still Overwatch. It's not a different game.
No.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us here at Hidden Doors and High Scores. Thanks for following along with this deep dive special episode. We will catch you back with our regular programming next week. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.